Number 1. Vicky White. On April 29, 2022, 56-year-old Vicky White, the Assistant Director of Corrections at the Lauderdale County Jail in Florence, Alabama, carried out one of the most shocking prison breaks in recent American history. That morning, she told colleagues she was transporting 38-year-old inmate Casey White to a supposed mental health evaluation at the courthouse. In reality, there was no appointment. Vicky White, a respected officer with a spotless record, had spent months secretly preparing for the escape. She sold her house, withdrew large sums of cash, and purchased vehicles under false names. She also developed a personal relationship with Casey White, who was serving a 75-year sentence and facing capital murder charges. After leaving the jail together, she abandoned the patrol car in a parking lot and switched vehicles with Casey. For the next 11 days, the pair traveled across state lines, sparking a nationwide manhunt that drew intense media attention. On May 9, 2022, United States Marshals tracked them to Evansville, Indiana. Following a brief car chase, their Cadillac crashed into a ditch. As law enforcement closed in, Casey White surrendered. Vicky White, however, suffered a fatal self-inflicted gunshot wound. Casey White was returned to custody and later sentenced to life in prison without parole for the escape. The case stunned the public, not only for its bold execution, but because Vicky White, once named Employee of the Year, had risked and ultimately lost everything for an inmate. Number 2. Erica Whittingham. In November of 2019, 33-year-old prison officer Erica Whittingham carried out an escape with her inmate lover from HMP Sudbury, an open prison in Derbyshire, England. Whittingham had worked at the prison for several years and was known by colleagues as reliable, but behind closed doors, she had developed an inappropriate relationship with a male prisoner who was serving a sentence for robbery. Their relationship grew over months until it crossed professional boundaries. Investigators later discovered that Whittingham had been secretly meeting him, supplying contraband, and planning to help him flee custody. On the day of the escape, the inmate scaled the perimeter fence of HMP Sudbury. Waiting on the other side was Whittingham, who had parked her car nearby. As he landed on the other side, she quickly opened the vehicle and let him inside. Together, they drove away from the prison grounds and into hiding. The escape sparked immediate outrage in the British press, as it revealed how a trusted prison officer had risked her career and freedom for an inmate. A nationwide alert was issued, and law enforcement agencies began tracking the pair. After a short time on the run, both were captured, and the escape attempt came to an end. Whittingham was charged with misconduct in a public office and assisting an offender. In 2021, she was sentenced to 2 years in prison for her role in the breakout. The inmate she aided was returned to custody and placed under tighter security measures. Number 3. Kendra Miller. In August of 2015, 33-year-old corrections officer Kendra Miller was arrested for helping a convicted murderer escape from the Brown Creek Correctional Institution in Polkton, North Carolina. Miller had been employed at the facility for several years and was trusted by her colleagues. Behind the walls, however, she began forming an inappropriate relationship with inmate Caleb K.K. Sanders, who was serving time for second-degree murder. Their relationship grew steadily, and according to investigators, Miller began sneaking him contraband and using her position to shield him from scrutiny. On the evening of August 16th, Sanders made his move. With Miller's assistance, he managed to slip away from his assigned area and head toward the prison's perimeter. Investigators later revealed that Miller had provided him inside information about blind spots in the security system and the routines of other guards. Sanders climbed the fence and made it past the razor wire, while Miller stood by to help him clear the final barriers. Once outside, Sanders fled into the night, and a large-scale manhunt immediately followed. State and local police launched roadblocks and patrols throughout Anson County. The escape triggered lockdowns at other correctional facilities in North Carolina, and the public was warned to remain alert. Sanders remained free for only a short time. Within days, law enforcement tracked him down, and he was recaptured without incident. The focus then shifted to Miller. Phone records, surveillance, and witness statements linked her directly to the escape plan. She was arrested at her home and charged with felony harboring an escapee, providing aid to a prisoner, and obstruction. In court, prosecutors emphasized the danger she had created by allowing a convicted killer to walk free. In late 2015, Miller pled guilty to her role in the escape. She was sentenced to a term of imprisonment and permanently barred from working in corrections again. Sanders was returned to Brown Creek under heightened security and faced additional charges for the breakout. Number 4. Serena Dodson. In June of 2018, 28-year-old detention officer Serena Dodson helped 3 inmates escape from the Curry County Detention Center in Clovis, New Mexico. Dodson had been working at the facility for a short time when she developed close ties with several inmates, including one serving time for violent offenses. Investigators later discovered that she had been exchanging messages with them and had agreed to aid their plan to break free. On the night of June 15th, Dodson deliberately left a series of security doors unsecured. At around 9 o'clock, 3 inmates, including convicted murderer Lionel Claw, walked undetected through the detention center and straight out of an unlocked door. The breakout was captured on surveillance cameras, showing the men casually exiting the facility without encountering resistance. Once outside, the escapees stole a getaway vehicle and fled into the night. Their absence went unnoticed for hours until a head count revealed they were missing. The escape sparked a massive manhunt across eastern New Mexico and into neighboring Texas, with federal marshals, state police, and local officers joining the search. Authorities released Dodson's name almost immediately, identifying her as the inside accomplice. They alleged that she had provided the inmates with details of guard rotations, helped coordinate their timing, and ensured their path out of the jail was clear. Within days, all 3 escapees were tracked down and recaptured. Investigators confronted Dodson with overwhelming evidence, including surveillance footage and communication records. She confessed to aiding the breakout. In court, Dodson pleaded guilty to assisting escape and was sentenced to 9 years in prison. The judge emphasized that her actions had placed the public at great risk and undermined trust in the corrections system. The inmates she helped were returned to custody and received additional charges for the escape. Number 5. Joyce Mitchell. In June of 2015, 51-year-old Joyce Mitchell, a civilian employee at Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York, played a central role in one of the most infamous prison escapes in American history. Mitchell worked in the tailor shop inside the prison, supervising inmates as they sewed uniforms and other supplies. To staff and co-workers, she was seen as a hard-working employee, a wife, and a mother. But behind the walls, Mitchell developed close and inappropriate relationships with 2 of the most dangerous inmates at Clinton, Richard Matt and David Sweat. Both men were convicted killers serving lengthy sentences. Over time, Mitchell became emotionally entangled with them, especially Richard Matt, with whom she exchanged personal notes and physical contact. By early 2015, Matt and Sweat began manipulating Mitchell into helping them plan an escape. Using her access to the tailor shop, she smuggled in contraband, including hacksaw blades, drill bits, and chisels. These items were concealed inside packages of frozen hamburger meat to avoid detection. Mitchell also provided information on guard routines and kept up the inmates' morale as they spent weeks digging through walls and cutting through steel pipes deep inside the prison's infrastructure. On the night of June 5, 2015, Richard Matt and David Sweat carried out their plan. They used the tools Mitchell had provided to saw through cell walls, crawl through a series of catwalks and tunnels, and emerge from a manhole cover outside the prison walls. It was a breakout straight out of a Hollywood script, and it immediately triggered headlines across the country. Authorities soon realized that Mitchell had been involved. Investigators discovered her smuggling activities, and co-workers admitted noticing her unusual closeness with Matt and Sweat. She was arrested shortly after the escape began, but by then the 2 inmates were already on the run. The escape launched a massive 3-week manhunt involving more than 1,000 officers. The search stretched across the dense forests of upstate New York and into the Canadian border region. After 22 days, Richard Matt was tracked down and shot dead by authorities. 2 days later, David Sweat was located and shot twice while fleeing on foot. He survived and was taken back into custody. Mitchell's role in the escape was exposed in full detail during her trial. She admitted to smuggling tools, providing frozen meat packages stuffed with contraband, and conspiring to act as a getaway driver. On the night of the escape, she claimed she backed out of driving the men to safety, citing panic and guilt. Regardless, her involvement had been critical in enabling the breakout. On September 28, 2015, Joyce Mitchell pleaded guilty to promoting prison contraband and criminal facilitation. She was sentenced to 7 years in prison. The judge told her that her actions had endangered lives, cost the state millions of dollars in the manhunt, and brought national embarrassment to the corrections system. Number 6. Dariana Burton. In April of 2025, 21-year-old Dariana Burton, a former employee of the Orleans Parish Jail in New Orleans, Louisiana, was arrested for her role in one of the largest jailbreaks in recent city history. Burton had been employed at the facility for only a short period of time, working as a support staff member inside the jail. During her tenure, she developed a relationship with an inmate who was later identified as her boyfriend. Their connection became more than casual conversation. Investigators later uncovered that she had provided him with information about guard rotations, access to contraband, and acted as a messenger between inmates inside the jail and accomplices outside. On the night of April 14, 2025, chaos erupted at the Orleans Parish Jail. 10 inmates managed to flee custody in a coordinated escape that exploited weaknesses in the facility's security systems. Several of the men had violent criminal records, including armed robbery and aggravated assault. The event shocked the city, raising immediate questions about how such a large group had managed to escape simultaneously. Law enforcement agencies, including the New Orleans Police Department, U.S. Marshals, and state troopers, launched a manhunt across Louisiana. Roadblocks were set up, neighborhoods were canvassed, and helicopters scanned rural areas outside the city. Within days, several of the escapees were recaptured, but the manhunt remained ongoing for others. Attention quickly turned to Burton when investigators traced phone records and discovered she had been in constant communication with one of the inmates before and during the jailbreak. Evidence showed she had provided details of guard changes, possible exit points, and timing that allowed the escapees to move undetected. On April 17th, Burton was arrested and charged with multiple counts, including conspiracy to commit escape, harboring escapees, and misconduct in public office. She was taken into custody and faced both state and federal charges because of the scale of the breakout. At her arraignment, prosecutors described her as a critical piece of the puzzle, alleging that her knowledge as a former employee made the mass escape possible. The Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office confirmed that her actions had compromised the integrity of the facility and placed the public at great risk. As of mid-2025, Burton remains in custody, awaiting trial. The case continues to develop, with prosecutors seeking a lengthy sentence due to the severity of the escape and the number of inmates involved. Number 7. Lucy Dudco. On March 25, 1999, 37-year-old librarian Lucy Dudco carried out one of the most daring prison escapes in Australian history when she hijacked a helicopter to free her lover, notorious bank robber John Killick, from Silverwater Correctional Complex in Sydney. Dudco had lived what many described as an ordinary life. Born in Russia, she migrated to Australia and eventually worked as a librarian in Sydney. Quiet, bookish, and polite, she seemed an unlikely figure to be connected to a hardened criminal. But in the late 1990s, she met John Killick, who was serving a 28-year sentence for armed robbery and other violent crimes. Their relationship quickly escalated, and Dudco became infatuated with him. Together, the pair began planning an escape that sounded more like fiction than reality. Dudco learned to operate a helicopter under the pretense of taking flying lessons, and she meticulously prepared for the day she would use those skills to break Killick out. On the afternoon of March 25th, Dudco booked a helicopter tour under a false name. Once in the air, she brandished a pistol and forced the pilot to change course, directing him to Silverwater Prison. As inmates exercised in the yard, the helicopter descended. Killick rushed forward, climbed aboard, and the pair lifted off as astonished guards and prisoners watched. The escape stunned the country, with media outlets dubbing it Australia's real-life Hollywood jailbreak. For 45 days, the couple remained on the run. They traveled across New South Wales, using disguises and relying on sympathetic acquaintances to hide them. Killick later claimed that during their time together, they were living like ghosts, constantly moving from one place to another and always fearing capture. The nationwide manhunt for Dudco and Killick dominated Australian headlines. Police distributed wanted posters, raided safe houses, and tracked reported sightings across multiple states. Their faces became instantly recognizable, with tabloid newspapers portraying Dudco as a modern-day Bonnie helping her Clyde. On May 8, 1999, their run came to an end. Acting on a tip, police surrounded the couple at a home in Bondi, Sydney. Dudco was arrested without incident, while Killick was returned to prison. In court, Dudco was found guilty of hijacking, aiding escape, and firearms offenses. She was sentenced to a maximum of 10 years in prison. John Killick resumed serving his original sentence, with additional time added for the escape. Number 8. Connie Weeden. On May 22, 2025, 59-year-old Connie Weeden of Slidell, Louisiana, was arrested for aiding one of the inmates involved in the mass jailbreak from the Orleans Parish Justice Center in New Orleans. The breakout, which occurred on May 16th, saw 10 inmates escape from the facility in a coordinated effort that exposed serious flaws in security. Several of the men were considered dangerous, with histories of armed robbery, aggravated assault, and violent crime. The incident sparked a citywide and statewide manhunt that drew national attention. Among the fugitives was 42-year-old Jermaine Donald, a career criminal serving time on multiple charges. Investigators discovered that Weeden, who was a relative and close associate of Donald, had been in contact with him both before and after the escape. Phone records showed frequent communication, and financial records revealed that she had sent him money through mobile applications to help him remain on the run. When authorities confronted Weeden, they alleged that her support had allowed Donald to obtain food, shelter, and transportation in the days following his escape. She was taken into custody in Slidell and charged with being an accessory after the fact to escape, a felony offense under Louisiana law. Weeden was booked into jail but released shortly after posting a $100,000 bond. Prosecutors have stated that they will pursue the case aggressively, citing the danger created by her assistance to an escaped inmate. As for Jermaine Donald, he was recaptured within weeks of the jailbreak and returned to custody, joining several of the other escapees who had also been tracked down. As of mid-2025, Weeden's case is still pending in court. Number 9. Bobby Parker. On August 30th, 1994, 34-year-old Bobby Parker vanished from her home near the Oklahoma State Reformatory in Granite, Oklahoma. That same day, convicted murderer Randolph Franklin Dial also disappeared from the prison. Bobby was the wife of Randy Parker, the deputy warden of the reformatory. She was a mother of 2 and was known in her community as quiet, responsible, and devoted to her family. Her sudden disappearance shocked everyone around her. For years, law enforcement could not determine whether she had been abducted or had willingly left with Dial. Dial had been serving a life sentence for the murder of a karate instructor in 1981. While in prison, he worked in the arts and crafts program and often interacted with staff families, including Bobby Parker. On the morning of the escape, he was discovered missing, and Bobby's van was later found abandoned near the Texas border. For nearly 11 years, there was no trace of Bobby Parker. Rumors circulated that she had been kidnapped, brainwashed, or that she had fallen in love with the inmate and chosen to live with him. The mystery deepened with each passing year, leaving her family in limbo. In April of 2005, investigators finally located Parker and Dial. They were living under false names on a chicken farm in Campty, Texas, near the Louisiana border. Neighbors described them as a quiet couple who kept to themselves. When police raided the property, Dial was taken back into custody and Parker was returned to Oklahoma. Dial died in prison in 2007, but Parker's case was far from over. prosecutors charged her with assisting escape, arguing that the evidence suggested she had not been a hostage, but a willing accomplice. During her trial, the jury was shown photographs, Valentine's cards, and other personal items linking her to Dial. Bobby Parker insisted that she had been a victim, claiming Dial had drugged her, threatened her family, and held her captive for more than a decade. Despite her testimony, in September of 2011, a jury found her guilty of assisting a prisoner escape. On November 7, 2011, Parker was sentenced to 1 year in prison. She served 6 months before being released in April of 2012. Number 10. Toby Door. In February of 2006, 48-year-old Toby Door, then known as Toby Young, carried out a daring escape with an inmate from Lansing Correctional Facility in Leavenworth County, Kansas. Door was not a corrections officer, but she had access to the prison through the Safe Harbor Prison Dog program, which she had created and supervised. The program allowed inmates to train rescue dogs, giving them responsibility and skills while awaiting adoption for the animals. Through her work, Door came into frequent contact with John Mannard, a 27-year-old inmate serving a life sentence for murder. What began as a professional relationship soon turned personal. Door later admitted that she had fallen in love with Mannard, and investigators discovered that the two had been planning an escape together. On February 12, 2006, the plan was put into action. Using her position with the dog program, Door smuggled Mannard out of the prison grounds by hiding him inside a large dog crate in the back of a van. The crate was loaded among other supplies, and security staff did not inspect it closely. In a matter of minutes, Mannard had slipped past the gates of Lansing Correctional. The two fled Kansas and made their way to Tennessee, where they hid in a rented cabin. For nearly 2 weeks, they avoided capture, fueling headlines across the country. Media outlets labeled Door as another case of love behind bars, comparing her to other women who had risked everything for inmates. Their freedom came to an end after 12 days. On February 24th, authorities in Tennessee located their vehicle. A state trooper attempted a traffic stop, and after a brief pursuit, the car crashed into a tree. Mannard was taken back into custody, and Door was arrested at the scene. She was charged with aiding and abetting escape, as well as providing a firearm to a felon. In court, she admitted her role in the escape and expressed regret. The judge sentenced her to 27 months in federal prison. Door served her time and was released in 2008. Her case remains one of the most unusual escape stories in Kansas history, remembered for the extraordinary method by which she smuggled a convicted murderer out of prison in a dog crate. These cases may sound shocking, but they're not as rare as you might think. This phenomenon is common enough that there's actually a psychiatric condition known as hybristophilia, the attraction to those who commit crimes. Criminologists explain that falling for an inmate can create a false sense of control, choosing when to write, when to visit, when to engage. For women who've survived abuse, that control can feel like healing, even as it leads them into dangerous territory. Prisoners know how to exploit that vulnerability. Through letters, secrets, and the appearance of intimacy, trust is built until consequences no longer matter. Which of these cases shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit subscribe for more stories like this, and I'll see you in the next one.